The wait is over. You were waiting, right?
Oh, God. No. Please, no.
The end is nigh. Darwin and Kat are back.
And we're back.
Hi, Darwin.
Hi, Kat.
Wow.
Been a minute since we've been able to say that.
Yeah, it's nice to say that again. Why don't we introduce ourselves and this show? I'm the Kat half of Darwin and Kat. You and I had a podcast. Then we had our own morning show. And that was from 2005 to almost 2006.
Or, yeah, give or take. Yeah, it was. Then there were spurts of it.
2005 to almost 2009. You know numbers are hard for me.
Yeah, I was going to say that was, well, hey, nothing.
Wow.
Some things have not changed. Yeah, we started as a podcast, then we became a show. And here we are, once again, full circle, a podcast.
Yep. And in this podcast, we're going to talk about the beginnings, the rise, and the spectacular crash and burn of the Darwin and Kat radio show. And hopefully there won't be too many numbers involved.
I'm going to do my best to keep the number count down.
Thank you.
So let's start at you're welcome, the very beginning here. How do you end up in Vermont? And what were you doing before you got there? What were you doing in California?
Okay, let's go all the way back. You know, I'm originally a New Yorker. I was born in Queens, but in the second grade, we moved to sunny Southern California. We landed in Palos Verdes, which you always say is quite fancy. And you are right. You might not know that my New York accent was so heavy when I got to California. I basically sounded like a bricklayer from the Bronx. It was really, really thick. So they stuck me in a class with all these kids who spoke no English because they just thought I was a Martian. It was what I was speaking was not English. So get to California. I got involved later on in LA punk rock. I played drums in several bands and I switched over to like comedy, voiceover, and improv. And I got a job as a writer-producer on an all-black awards show. And I was the only white person on staff. Darwin, I was their diversity hire. I mean, it's about time.
I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch. We're both Italian. We're kind of the beige people. So is it really that diverse?
Well, I mean, we're the tan mushroom color, like the drapes at a DoubleTree Inn.
Now, I haven't been in one since college, so I don't know what you're doing out there in Nevada, but...
We'll get to that later on. So just after that, I think I did the most cliched thing possible. I went to Vermont to break into show business. And what I mean is...
It's a hotbed of Hollywood up there.
Absolutely. All those covered bridges and like teddy bear stores. I got hired at a heritage alternative station to do overnights. It was like the K-Rock in the Northeast. And that's where I met you. That brings us to
literally.
you. Yeah,
you ran into me in a hallway, like right away.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Hello. Yeah, and I grew up in the area. So I grew up, even though I went to college in Arizona, we both went to NAU, Northern Arizona, at different times. But I moved back to the Albany area after being on radio in Phoenix and Flagstaff, a few, bouncing around. And I'd always dreamed of being on EQX growing up. And when I was in high school, I took a banner from a concert off the wall and took it home and hung it up on my bedroom wall. So I was that kid.
I'm going to be on the radio one day. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Did you like talk in your hairbrush and stuff?
I didn't have a hairbrush, but essentially, yeah, remote control, right, to the TV. But I didn't say I want to be on the radio. I said, I will be on EQX someday.
Oh,
that was my goal. And so, yeah, it was cool. I was living, I wasn't getting paid great, but I was living my best life, nighttime, singular there. And I was a night guy. I loved it. I got to do all sorts of great stuff. And I met you and the rest becomes history from there. Although it was a little bit of a rough start, wasn't it? Because they basically said, hi, this is Kat, and you're going to train her, Darwin. So I thought, this will be easy, right?
I'd never been on the radio. I mean, maybe like I won a contest in the fourth grade, but I'd never actually been on the radio. What I'd been doing was a ton of voiceover. And that's why they hired me. I just, one day said, oh my God, this radio station, they're looking for a DJ. Let me just send them my demo of commercials. And they're like, yeah, come on in.
And they thought, hey, she sounds good. She's kind of funny, right?
She's nice.
And
she's clean.
And also, it's not hard to push buttons on the radio. How hard could it be? But for you, it's a whole other challenge, right?
I'm technically inept. I mean, I demonstrated that I'm bad with numbers and buttons are even harder for me. So yeah, they said, this is Darwin. He's going to train you. You're going to do, you're going to start overnights until you get comfortable with this. So what did you were doing your night show, right? From 6 to midnight?
And generally back then you would just have somebody on overnights, and usually it was a 5-minute quick discussion. Here's the microphone. Here's the button. Don't click this. Don't touch that. And you were not getting it. Like, you were turning on the wrong mic.
I was not good to go.
No, you had the CD player queued up instead of the automation. It was just so I made a little notes for you. And do you remember this? I put little Post-its all over the board for you.
Touch this. Don't touch this. Touch this and die. Oh, I remember my favorite one. Do you remember the special button on there on the board?
Don't ever touch it.
No.
Death ray.
Yeah, death ray. Do not touch death ray. You know, I don't think
what does that do?
I don't think I've ever had the guts to ask what death ray actually did. Did it like decimate a small town in New Hampshire?
Well, no. Let's just say the person that we needed to replace flipped that switch.
Bye.
It went to nothing. I flipped it all the time. It didn't do anything.
Oh my God, this is terrible.
I was destroying some town in like France, and I didn't even know it every time I flipped it.
This is like the truth about Santa, but I still believe.
He's real.
Of course he is. Moving on.
Absolutely. That's a story for later in the podcast too. When we said something about that on The Edge, and we got those complaints because somebody was very mad. We had said that on the air.
Correct. I think the North Pole wrote to us directly. So I started my overnights, and I had in my head what I wanted to do, wanted to say on the air, how I wanted to go in and out of the songs. And it just got completely jumbled up and just died before it left my mouth.
Over and over and over. I ended up being there not just for an hour, not just all night, but for the next, 3 nights?
3 nights. You were with me until probably about 4 a.m. I think it was like midnight through 4. I think at one point I was like clinging to your pant leg. You just couldn't leave. I mean, I was like blocking the door. But by the 3rd night, the good news is I started to get the hang of it. And they gave me the Sunday Rewind, which was the 80s show, which I thought was really fun to do. And then I just started filling in for anybody on air who got sick. I mean, I would just wait for someone to eat a bad clam, call in sick, and I was right there.
You were very reliable. You were on it. Not the best with the buttons ever, but you were on it. So
reliable in some ways. I didn't know how to take calls, and I didn't know how to really do anything except just talk and push a button. And I got away with it for a long time.
But you were fun. You were funny on the radio. I enjoyed listening to you. It was great. And we should probably give a little background too for people that did not grow up in the Albany area, who've never heard of WEQX, that it's still around today. Actually, this year, 2024, when we're recording this, is their 40th anniversary. November will be their 40th anniversary.
Oh,
and isn't that incredible?
Cool.
And they are still independent. They are still doing their thing. I'm kind of secretly hoping they do a reunion thing, because wouldn't it be cool to be back just to do a shift?
I would fly in just to do a shift, and you would have to be there to push the buttons. Lucky you. But I would love that. I hope they invite us back.
I will push your buttons for you.
Thank you.
It would be amazing, but it's so amazing not to overuse the word amazing, incredible and remarkable and unique. They're still around. It was the vision of a guy named Brooks Brown. He was from Texas, moved to Vermont to start a radio station. Brooks has his own history, and we could do a whole podcast of stories about Brooks, and we have our own to share. But he never relented on his vision. He never sold the station. He could have made millions for it. And he let us do what we wanted to do within reason, but he also would question what we did to make sure we were sure it was the best thing for the station. And that was so incredible to have that freedom.
He gave us so much freedom, and he gave me my start. And he was sad he's not with us anymore. He was
he passed away about a decade ago.
Lovable, imposing figure.
He didn't really care when you mispronounced various cities in the area either.
No, but I did say we're in New Jersey once. I was new to the Northeast.
You were very new to the Northeast.
Hadn't lived there. Hadn't lived in New England. Hadn't been there since I was a little kid. New Jersey is
also a big animal lover.
Yes.
Very big animal lover. He had Fred the cat that lived there. They had their pugs that were always at the station.
I miss
his wife,
pug.
Mimi, still runs the station. Mimi's still there.
Ah, sweet.
It's really great.
I blamed a lot of my mistakes on that cat, Fred.
All the time.
Poor thing. I mean, he knocked us off the air. He's the reason, I didn't get the song queued up on time. I probably blamed him for the Kennedy assassination. Anything I could pin on the poor dude.
And you did, and it was pretty effective usually. I mean, there was one time you were just petting him, and then there was dead air because, you had to pet the cat.
Well, yeah, he's an orange cat. You must pet. I'm a big cat lover. We're both cat owners, so.
Yeah, I am now. I mean, I was always a dog owner, but yeah, now I got the cat. And I have to say, it was just so welcome to the dark
We've
side,
been
right?
waiting.
It was such an honor to work there, though, and we had a lot of fun with it. And our show really never would have been able to take off the way it did had we not been able to have that experience at WEQX.
No, because we always had chemistry, but we developed it there because they gave us the freedom to do that. I loved working there. Absolutely loved working there. It was a big, old, drafty Victorian house with a lot of ghosts and a lot of stories and a couch. Do you remember the couch that you didn't want to sit on?
You sat on it, and I almost had a heart attack. I was like, you never sit on the radio station couch.
I didn't realize it was like the ghosts of 1,000 jam bands had sat on that couch. There were a lot.
And a lot of DJ DNA, too.
Yeah. Don't get out the black light. Thanks.
Oh, I wonder if the couch is still there. I don't know.
It probably spontaneously combusted one night during a long Pearl Jam song.
Oh, man, that couch was just... bleh. But it was just the station. I remember once being described as it looked like it sounded like it looked like, and it looked like it sounded, and it really did.
Haunted and
the
crunchy.
Upstairs, yeah, haunted. The upstairs, the master control, which was the main air studio, was the old master bedroom. The conference room was the old dining room, and Brooks was generally there. I mean, he was tall. He was, how tall would you say?
6'8" or 9. I mean,
really?
I'm only 5'2", so everybody looks that tall to me. But he was a big fella.
And he had a Texas accent, but it was kind of a New England-y Texas accent. I can't even do it. It was like, Darwin, it was very, everything about that man was unique.
It was an intimidating drawl. Intimidating until you got to know him. Do you remember his monocle?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
well, because he had lost an eye.
Yeah.
And he really didn't, and there's a whole backstory to that I'm not going to get into. But you were always shocked by his monocle.
Well, yes, because it had a needle, and instead of wearing glasses that go nicely over your ears or a monocle where you squint, you're like, and it stays in, it stabbed into his cheek. So he could see, he would stab himself in the face, and that is a badass.
Yeah, he did have glasses from time to time, but I remember the monocle, and you were always just totally enthralled, yet, I don't know.
How do I not look at it when he's talking to me? I mean, I'm just looking at this weapon going, this bolt right into his face. So I just kind of look between his eyes so I wouldn't freak out.
Well, that's a trick they tell you in acting school, to look at the bridge of the nose when you're talking to somebody, where it looks like you're looking them in the eye, but you're not. I know stuff. I know little things. I don't know much, but I know that. So this is where it all starts. And you had this wackadoodle idea that after 3 nights on the air, you were going to do what? What were we going to do?
I was convinced that we could do a morning show, that we could be this great team, which is insane. It's like working in the deli of a hospital and thinking you can do eye surgery. But I thought, hey, let's start as a podcast. Do you know what podcasting is, Darwin?
And at the time I was like, so I looked it up, and an iPhone wasn't even invented yet. So you used to have to go on iTunes on your computer and download it and listen to it. And I thought, oh, what the hell?
Yeah,
why
let's
not? And then
record a little show in my dining room, and it's our podcast, and we'll see if anybody's out there.
And I had asked you, well, what's out there? And you did some listening on your own, and you brought back some samples that were not very high quality, I'll say.
The bar was very low. There was one coupon clipping lady, and she would tell you how to buy like 6,000 dryer bags for 34 cents. And then she would just start yelling at her children. She'd be like, Cletus, God damn it. Would you stop playing with the back door? So that was good.
He was captivating.
Yeah, that was really good.
And then there was the washing machine lady.
Yeah, her washing machine kept going off balance.
Kadoosh, kadoosh, kadoosh. Oh, that's my washing machine. Hold on. Kadoosh, kadoosh, kadoosh. And she wouldn't turn it off. She would just let it keep rolling.
Yeah, I mean, why bother getting up?
This.
So
yeah, we heard this and thought, well, how much worse could we be?
We're fine. We could do our little show. It'll be fine. I mean, there was not a lot of competition.
And we did it, which we can truly say we were one of the first podcasts. We really were. Very quickly, we ended up being very surprised. I think about not even a dozen episodes in, we got to look at our stats, and we had crossed 10,000 subscribers.
Which today, podcasting in the sea of podcasts is not anything. It's nothing. But back then, you couldn't even find podcasts, and most people didn't know what it was. So that was
and we had
cool.
people all over the country. Yeah, it was great. It's kind of, you're right when you say that. Today, 10,000 is sad.
Yeah.
Back then, 10,000 was like the lottery. It was amazing. And that's where it all started until we got noticed. But we have a few other stories to tell before we get to WZMR.
The most famous mid-market show you've never heard is back. Darwin and Kat.
After 3 glorious nights on the air, Kat came up with this idea. What was your idea?
That we should be a morning show together. But first, we need to do a podcast. I need to just get you to talk to me, to record with me, to do a demo, and we'll be this amazing team.
So we thought, all right, I was game for the idea. I thought, why not? And then, but I think what sold me is you're like, you can talk about whatever you want, because there were some weird rules at EQX. And because the mountain that their antenna was on, their tower and the antenna was on the transmitter site, was owned by these Karsuthian monks.
Right.
So we had some weird rules about what we could say in there, like Jesus and Mary chain. We had to call it the J&M chain. So you were like, you can swear in the podcast and we can talk about like blouse clowns and lady parts and this and that. And I'm like,
we can make pee-pee jokes.
And then out of the blue, I heard from someone I knew through somebody else that there was basically they were looking for a new morning show in Albany and they liked our podcast and that we started to talk to them. But then they told us, basically that we were going to replace Stern. And they also said, we want to hear you guys live on the air together. So how did we pull that off? You
were doing a countdown show for New Year's Eve, and I just kind of wormed my way onto it. I'm like, hey, let me just go on and sit in with Darwin and just do a couple of breaks with him. And we did an entire show together, and that was actually our audition show for the Albany station. But our current station had no idea that that's what we were scheming to do.
No, not at all. And I was going to, it's 102.7 songs of the year, which is really 103 top songs with the frequency. And they went for it. They were like, sure, have fun. And, it was cool because they were like, have some friends over to the station. It was a lot of fun, except for, well, there's 2 parts. One, you started getting a little like, ooh, like midway through the show, but you were on point on the air. And then come to find out later, what happened to you?
I had shingles. What 30-something has shingles? Like, what? I started seeing these like creepy things on my side and I started, feeling really foggy. And I'm like, well, maybe another shot of vodka will fix that.
And so you did. And then you went to go sleep in the conference room. And one of our friends that was there was a police officer in Vermont. And you just fell asleep on his bag. And we had to like move you. And he's like, oh my God, you can't sleep on my bag. My gun is in there. So you were just there was a lot of things that could have gone wrong that night.
It felt a little lumpy. When we were actually doing the countdown, one of the things, it's a little foggy, but one of the things I really remember is we were, of course, building up to number one. The number one song is coming up. The number one song of the year is coming up. Do you remember what we played for our number one song?
I could look up the playlist if I don't remember it.
It wasn't on the playlist. You and I built it up, and then we played The Rainbow Connection by Kermit. It was Kermit the Frog, The Rainbow Connection. People were so excited. They were calling in going, I don't remember you guys playing that during the year, all year, but I really love this song.
I forgot we did that. We totally messed with everybody there, didn't we? That was great. I forgot that.
A wholesome thing.
Yeah. I completely forgot that. And that's one of the things I love about, again, this podcast is a show about our show. And even before we were doing a show, we were, there's a lot of these things that fell into place. Do you remember what the number one song actually was?
No.
What year was that? I'm trying to remember what year it would have been.
Was 2006 reviewing 2005. And I want to guess that it was Helena or Helena?
Helena? No. Oh, no. You know why we did Rainbow Connection? I just pulled up the list. I have it. Because we both hated the number one song.
Oh, gosh.
Hated it.
Lay it on me.
Modest Yahoo.
It's King Without a Crown, the live version. Modest Yahoo.
Yep.
I mean, that song had its day.
We did not like that song at all. Neither of us did. And I think that's why we did that, because that was really funny. So
I'll take Rainbow Connection.
There you go. Yeah, I'll take that too. You know what? High quality. Muppets are always high quality. So, but we still had to be on the air for a while. And I think they were listening to you and you started getting really nervous. I remember one night I forgot what you screwed up on the air. You pushed the wrong button.
Everything.
And you came on the air. Yeah, every night. I know. But this one in particular, you came on and you blamed Fred, the cat. Because remember, there was a cat that lived at EQX, an orange tabby.
Yeah, he was such a sweetheart. I loved Fred, but the poor thing, I blamed him for all my mistakes. Going into the
You
wrong
did. Like,
song, dead air, not coming back from the bathroom in time because, well, I mean, I had to pet the cat. Anything that would go wrong was poor Fred's fault.
Fred did it. And before you were there was another cat, Segway. She was really sweet.
I
She
never
died
got to meet
before
her.
you were there. What was your weirdest moment on the air there?
One afternoon was just going fine. I hadn't made any major blunders on or off the air, but Brooks called on the hotline. Now, if you're not familiar with the hotline, that's, the back line. That's like an internal number. And when that rings, it was Brooks, and it probably wasn't, pleasant news. So I picked up, of course, and he's like, "Why'd you knock us off the air?" And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm looking, and all the meters are fine, and I can hear us, and everything's okay. And then I just said, "Brooks, what do you hear?" And he goes, "It's just like," and I said, "What radio station are you listening to?" And then he looked at whatever dial he had, and he went, oh, wrong station. Never mind. And he hung up. That one time, it was not my fault. He had the wrong station on.
And you called me afterward, and you were like, "Is he okay?" I'm like, "I don't know." He was just, I think it was like a bathroom radio, right? Like one of those old school,
Yeah, a little dial on it. It just wasn't fine-tuned to my voice.
Well, I also think you were so well equipped to do that he probably thought it was off air, and it must have been you. But for once, it wasn't.
It wasn't a leap, though. It was not a leap.
No. Now, I asked that question because it was everybody that worked there has the story. I mean, everybody has, some people, multiple stories. It was legendary, and there were legends to work there. And like I said, he was a very eclectic guy. I mean, you don't disagree, right? He was in his own league.
He was a big, lovable Muppet.
He was tough. And he had the station logo tattooed on his forearm, and then the old logo on the other arm. I mean, that station was his life.
What was your scary story with him, or the weirdest thing that happened to you there?
It was definitely with him, and I had a lot. But my weirdest one, speaking of, an act one, I mentioned Stephen King, right? So this actually was almost like a deleted scene from The Shining. The transmitter was in the basement of this old hotel that was on top of Mount Equinox, and the motel's since been demolished. But there was something wrong at the transmitter site, and he needed to go up there. And he looked at me, and he's like, "Darwin, you're going up the mountain with me." I mean, I wanted to see the transmitter and the antenna. I love that stuff, right? I'm a nerd. But he didn't tell anybody he was taking me with him. So that becomes a problem later. And we're going up the mountain, and it's in a suburban, and we're flying. And this road is not a road you go more than maybe 15 or 20 miles an hour on. And I mean, he's flying. He goes, "We gotta get up a lot of speed for when we hit the ice." And I'm like, I am going to die.
Was he driving a bus? I feel a need for speed.
Basically, right? So at one point he goes, "Darwin, I only got one eye. Can you tell me how close I am to the ledge?" So I look out my window, and I am not seeing any ground below us. I am looking straight down into the abyss. And I made a noise I could never make again. It was something like, it's like, not too close. I'm like, oh my God. So you would think that's the scariest part of the story, right?
It's not.
No,
okay.
Not at all. We get up to the summit, and there's about 3 feet of snow. It's late November. There's a lot of snow. And he can't drive behind the old hotel to the basement to go in for the transmitter. He goes, "We got to go in the hotel to get to it." Okay. So he goes, "Darwin, I need you to stomp out footprints so I can walk." So I was wearing boots. I used to wear boots all the time then for some dumb reason. And he was wearing Birkenstocks. Remember that? He would always wear Birkenstocks.
Yeah.
And he wanted footprints. So, yeah. So how tall am I? 5'8", right? And you said he was like 9 feet tall?
At least.
So he's walking behind me, and he's swearing and yelling at me. He's like, "Darwin, damn it, why are you so short? I got snow on my toes."
Us radio folk are wee people. I'm sorry, Brooks.
I'm like, how can I fix this? I don't know. So we get into the hotel. We get into the kitchen. And he goes up to the walk-in cooler, and he opens it. And he goes, "Get in." And I'm like,
how shining is this?
Hey, now what do you think's going through my head when he opens the refrigerator door and says, "Get it"?
You're dead, man. There's no escape.
This is it.
Say goodbye.
Yep.
Say goodbye to your family and your friends.
And I'm thinking, and I look at him, I'm like, "Oh, hell no." He's like, "Don't be a wuss, go." And I'm like, no. And then he goes, so he goes in. Now, if you've worked in a restaurant, you might know, some people might know, like through the walk-in cooler could be the walk-in freezer. There's a door in the back. It goes in. But in this hotel, it was the door to the basement. Whose idea was that? Right? Freaky. So I go follow him in, and we're going down these rickety stairs to the basement, and we're down there, and he's in the transmitter vault, and where the room, and I hear footprints upstairs. I'm like, Brooks, there's someone here. Pay no attention to that. You hear nothing. And I was getting freaked out because this place was abandoned, right? You know what else was weird? The heat was on when we went in. It was on low, but it was heated.
That's
Is that
just
weird?
the flickering flames of hell.
Yeah. So come to find out, I found out later on, there was actually somebody that he knew that was just like living there and wasn't supposed to.
So there was just a random squatter in there?
Yeah. I didn't really get all the details. I was like, whatever.
Was he the new overnight guy?
Right? Broadcasting from the vault. So while I'm up there, my cell phone really wasn't working because on top of the mountain, it was getting too many signals. And meanwhile, down the studio, nobody knows where I am. My truck's there. They can't find me. They think something terrible's happened to me. So there's this whole like panic that something's gone wrong. And they're yelling at me when I said to them, I'm like, I got all these missed calls that I can't answer. So I called from the landline and they were like, where are you, man? I'm like, Brooks has me. I don't know.
Brooks
So like, why are you yelling at me?
Brooks has me, and I'm like wiggling my hands to get out of the restraints. That's what everyone's picturing.
But you know what? I got to say, if you're going to be somewhere and there's going to be a murderer or crazy person, Brooks would have taken care of him. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like I would have been safe. So it was I think we could do a whole podcast series about people's experiences at EQX. I'm sure people have crazier stories than we do, but those are my craziest ones. So that is how we met. And that's how our show came together. And before we knew it, what happened? We got a phone call saying what?
Hey, you guys are the new morning show on WZMR. If you want it, do you want to replace Stern?
And we were like, yeah.
Aw, look, they're all grown up. They have mortgages now and an unhealthy attachment to plants, an appreciation for comfortable footwear, Darwin and Cat. And not enough fiber in their diet.
We are now a morning show, and we're all excited about it. And we show up at WZMR, and we're like, let's go on the radio.
It's the first day. I'm so pumped. I'm so excited. And
Yeah,
I'm so
we were
terrified,
excited,
though.
even
Yep.
though I'm not a morning person. And you went to move your microphone, and what happened?
It fell onto the desk, banked off, and fell in my lap.
Bang! Right as we were going on the air.
You know, when people say they put us in a broom closet, no, they actually did put us in a studio that was being used for storage, and there was still a mop in it.
Yeah, there was like dust cloths on stuff. And then I had never used Audio Vault before, which was the automation system. And terrible, by the way. I hate Audio Vault.
Yeah,
to
but
this day.
I had such faith in you. I thought you could always get us on the air. If we have like 2 Niblets cans and a string, I'm like, he's got this. He's going to get us on the air. You had so much more experience than I did.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, you just got to make it work, And other than my first night in the air ever. But it was a huge distraction too. Here I am with a new automation system that's quirky and weird. And I'm like, I don't like it.
Well, they also didn't give us a lot of time to prepare. I mean,
no.
They gave us about 2 days and they said, you know what? We want you guys to hit the ground running. And they kept saying that, hit the ground running, which pretty much meant skid on our faces.
Which is what we did. Although we did have to remember there was a lot of pressure for us to get going. And EQX took, like in radio, they don't take your 2-week notice. They say, thank you for working here. We're going to let you go today. And EQX was like, nah, we trust you. You're not going to promote the show on the air, Yeah. And I was like, remember we were like, oh crap, this isn't good. So I remember what the Albany Broadcasting did. They said, let's cut a promo for the new show. And EQX didn't like that. And they let us go early, which was great. So there we were with no prep, just kind of thrown into it.
We didn't have any Wi-Fi or internet in the studio.
No.
We had no show prep. We just had microphones and we're just staring at each other.
Yeah, and we actually didn't even know the phone number. I had to ask somebody in one of the other stations, what's the phone number for us? So we started saying the number and nobody was calling at first. We're like, nobody is listening. And, I think we started to feel like we made a mistake, right? Like it was just so disheartening.
It was terrible. But then the phone finally rang. That first
We're
phone
like,
call.
Yes. And I was like, Wonder for Nine on the Edge. Good morning.
You suck. Where's Howard?
You're awful. You're not Robin. You suck. Die. Oh, welcome.
And then one person called and said, hey, is Howard there? No, he's
And we're
not
like,
here.
no.
You cannot talk to him. He's not here.
He went to the sky. like satellite, not died. He went to the sky. But we both grew up with Howard, and we both loved Howard, but we didn't want to be Howard.
Well, huge Howard Stern fans, and that his show made me want to be in radio. And I mean, I just felt like a huge student of his show. It's like, what does Howard teach you? Howard teaches you to be yourself, to be honest, to go on the air and try to really connect with your audience. Don't try to imitate Howard, because the audience will crush you and he will come after you and crush you.
I think we had this philosophy that we hated morning shows. We listened to morning radio and we said, God, who wants to listen to this drivel? So let's be the anti-morning show. And we're not going to be Stern copycats, but we're going to learn from him how to do our own thing. So yeah, we love Stern.
And it took about 3 weeks of constant abuse from our callers. And then something just clicked.
Well, now before that, we got a request. We got somebody that wanted to hear a song. Remember that?
Yeah, that was the turning point. That was absolutely the turning point.
I'd like to know if you could play some Slayer.
We didn't play Slayer at all. And then they got mad at us and they said, you suck. We couldn't win. I think it was just funny because there was this whole idea of be yourselves, right? They kept telling us be ourselves, but there was an asterisk on that, a huge asterisk.
Be
they
yourselves.
didn't want, us to really be ourselves, did they?
No, be yourselves unless you're Darwin and Kat, because they brought us into the office and said, what are you planning to talk about? We laid it out and they looked at us and said, nobody wants to listen to the mommy and the homo.
No mommy and homo.
So my son was very young.
Yourself.
Yeah, be yourself. My son was really young at the time, and you had a boyfriend, and they thought that would absolutely be scandalous. Looking at that now, looking back, that's not weird. That's not like something that I think would drive anybody away, but they were really afraid that our audience would reject us.
They did. And we kind of at times would say, well, they're backing up dump trucks, and they would go, well, no, they're not. They're also state workers. Well, they were right, and so were we, but at the same time, I think it would have been a great, and we did end up finally, you came out as mommy after wife swap, and that's a whole episode coming up in the series, but I never really was out, although I wasn't not out either, but it wasn't like, we weren't putting it on the billboards.
I think if you read between the lines, if you listened every day, which some, for 4 hours, which some people actually did, they might kind of get a hint of your actual life, but no, they shoved you way, way back in the closet with like the garment bags.
Yeah, and it was what it was. And I think it was the point they said something about, oh, well, you could have been out. And I was like, oh, okay. That would have gone over like a fart in church.
Yeah, we were just afraid of losing our jobs, and we just couldn't say anything about it.
So they organized this media event our first week to debut our show, to introduce us to advertisers, the other media, just to meet Darwin and Kat. And they were like, oh, we organized this whole thing. And we booked a band. We thought, oh, this sounds cool, right? And then we found out the band, which I did not know was a thing, but I think you knew about this, right? That they were a thing?
It's one of the very few bands that you and I are taller than. It's Mini Kiss. It's a Kiss tribute band with very little people. And they were nice.
And they were nice. They were cool.
They were really nice people.
But, so, and that went terribly wrong. This was a perfect Darwin and Kat debut. They took pictures with us. They took pictures with them. And then they wanted pictures of just them, right?
Yeah.
And how did that go? Do you remember this?
Yeah, you were stepping out of the way and you knocked into one and he knocked into the other and he knocked into the other. And you completely knocked over Mini Kiss. It was like watching bowling pins fall. And then they were on the ground with their little legs just kicking in the air. And we felt so bad. We were like trying to help them up.
And meanwhile, I'm like, I didn't do it. But I did. But you know what? You know how I did it? I stepped over the arm of the couch instead of just walking around it. And I caught them with my foot. And boom, 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 boom. And I turned around mortified.
It was like a Rube Goldberg device. One fell into the net. Yeah, it was. But you know what? They were good. Like they did a really good love gun.
They did. They were fun. They were absolutely fun. But at the same time, I remember being just like, this is how we are introducing ourselves to the world. We're going to knock over our musical guest.
Here we are, world.
Yeah. So, and I got to give you a lot of credit here. Something else, we talk about a show being about a show a lot, or we didn't talk about on the air and people didn't know about really, is that I am not pleasant in the morning. I will just put it right out there and apologize to you for the world to hear. I am so sorry you had to deal with morning me.
I appreciate that. At the time. No, really. All right. At the time, you were living in my house.
Yeah.
And we drove into work together. And we're in Bennington, Vermont, driving to Albany. It was almost an hour.
Yeah, it was. And we had to get up at like 2 at that point just to get there on time.
Yeah. And it was the first morning. And I'm like, I just sprung out of bed. I'm so excited. Like, this is the first day of amazing things. Like, we have a morning show. I can't even believe this is happening. And
this is your dream.
This is my dream job. And like, this was everything I ever wanted. So I go down in the kitchen and I see you and you're standing at the coffee maker. And I said in a like really happy kind of Marsha Brady voice, "Good morning." And you growled at me. You growled at me in my own kitchen. And I was like, I don't think he likes getting up in the morning.
No. And then you were just, on the way in, you were just like, blabbity, blabbity.
Yeah, I had things to say. Wow. I was like, I turned into my mother. I'm like, well, look at that billboard. Oh, a crow. Just anything I saw. I was just so excited and I was describing. And what did
You're
you
reading
say?
every road sign.
Everything.
4 miles. And like,
we're getting close.
I believe you called me a nasty beast one morning.
Yes, that was fitting. Absolutely. Do you remember what you said to me as we were driving in one morning?
It depends which one. There was a lot I said.
Yeah, you talk a lot. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, I think that's why they hired me.
Or the other morning I felt like talking and all of a sudden out of the blue I say random stuff and I'm like, I just remembered why I'm afraid of the woods at night.
Oh yeah? Why are you afraid of the woods?
I got attacked by a mountain lion.
What?
And you were like, how the hell do you forget that? What's wrong with you?
How does that slip your mind, Darwin?
Yeah, just slipped my mind. So, but I thought of it driving in at stupid o'clock, right?
Well, do you want to explain why you're such a beast in the morning? Like, there's actually a reason, which I didn't know at the time. Why?
Yeah, I'm a night hawk. That's it. I loved doing nights. Yeah, was there more to it?
Oh, I thought you had
what did
some
you
sort of
figure out?
like, I don't know, some sort of exotic medical condition that made you a crowd in the morning.
I do have, I forget what it's called even. I'm diagnosed with it, but I forget. So it's this sleep disorder where my brain still, basically, when I was a teenager, I never got out of that. You know, that like get up at noon and stay up late thing. I never outgrew that. It never changed.
Like, get out of my room, Mom.
Oh, yeah. I used to throw alarm clocks at my poor mother. I don't know why she didn't kill me.
Women, it's a saint. But I didn't know that. And I completely coerced you into doing the earliest job that you could do other than like a bricklayer or construction worker, morning show people.
Right?
Yep.
Garbage collector. We would have gotten paid more.
Oh, a lot more.
So I will say, you had no idea. I never worked with someone like you. You never worked with someone like me.
Right.
And I think my favorite story of one of the awful things I said to you one morning was you came in and you were this is after we were not living together. And you came in and you were all excited and you were like, oh my God, I went to Goodwill and I found these cute little Mary Janes and I love them and they were only $1 and blah, 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 blah. And I looked you dead in the eye. And what did I say? Do you remember this?
Yeah. You said, somebody probably died in those shoes.
Oh, no, I didn't say probably. I just said someone died in those. And you look so defeated
I was really
and
sad.
so hurt.
And then I sniffed them. I'm like, I think you're right. No, I was.
You never wore them again, did you?
No, God, no. I burned them. I didn't want to touch them.
Yeah, you probably were worried I was going to yell at you again or something like, why are you wearing the dead lady's shoes, you
All
bitch?
right. Now
Like,
I have to come to your defense a little bit. Yes, you were a beast. Yes, it was very difficult. But I want to explain that you're also under an enormous amount of pressure there because, as we mentioned, I didn't have any technical skills. And radio did not want to pay for us to have a producer. So you were doing all the production. You were recording, doing all the phone calls, and I'm just sitting there, da-da-da, making my jokes. So if you were ever sick or out or late because you hate getting up in the morning, all the pressure was on you to just keep everything afloat. Still, the thing about the shoes really bummed me out, but that's what you were. That's kind of the pressure that you're under.
Well, I was, and I don't think at the time I was able to articulate that. I was just kind of like,
oh, you did. It came out like,
I did. Me be blunt in the morning? No, never. But I do have to say one other thing about our first day there that was really special. So, and our first week was, do you remember the letter we got our first day on the air?
Yeah, from Joe Condon.
Yes. Joe Condon. I got to take a minute to talk about Joe Condon. All right. Joe Condon, he's still around. The man's a legend. He is the silkiest, most beautiful radio voice. Like one of those, right? You know what I mean, right?
Classic dulcet tones of the radio.
Yes. And he was a legend and still is. He was on WTRY, the Big 98, back in the top 40 heyday of the 60s. And I was in awe that he was out the day we started. And he left us a note welcoming us. And it was a really nice letter. And then, and this guy's a legend I respected so much, right? And at the very end, it said, P.S. Today is Hitler's birthday. You're starting on Hitler's birthday.
Now go do your show.
But you know what I realized was he was our people, right? He had our sense of humor and he wanted to leave us this really nice welcome note. But at the very end, he added it on there, right?
Well,
and that's how I always remember our first day in the air was 420. That's how I remember it.
The man was a history buff. And when it's 420, he just had to let us know that little nugget of information.
But he did it just to be funny, too.
He's great.
You know, and it was
great.
just like, it was great. And I was like, I felt so welcomed, but also the fact that a living legend had taken the time to write us a note and sign it. I thought that was amazing.
Yes, it was. He's a living legend. And to this day, I'm still in touch with him here and there on Facebook. And he's a lovely, lovely man.
Yes, he is. And later on, after we worked there, by the way, I got to meet his wife, who's equally as wonderful. And it was such an honor to get that letter from him. But that was probably the only good thing in the first couple of weeks to really make us feel good. But it all worked out, didn't it? Because lucky for us, the whole thing did not spiral into disaster.
Well, not yet, but it would soon.
And so that is what we're going to cover in upcoming episodes. We ended up having a top-rated show, and it crashed, and it burned, and it did spiral into disaster. And I just have to say, Kat, it's good to be back.
It's great to be back. I'm so glad we're able to do this again. And I feel like this show is not only to talk about our show and hopefully kind of redeem our show, but really put our friendship back together. And I feel like that's happening. I'm just really, really happy about that.
And I am too. I mean, we've talked throughout the years and really gotten we had a lot of healing to do because it was not a pretty exit. And I think those would be the less funny episodes when we get to those. So we're going to hold off on those for a long time. We have a lot of other funny stuff to talk about. And I know you really want to talk about us delivering pizzas. We will get to that and everything else that came that happened during the Darwin and Cat radio show. So this is the story of the Darwin and Cat radio show. It's great to be back.
Darwin and Cat, it is good to be back.
Next time on the Darwin and Cat podcast.
Isn't she precious?
With her beady little eyes. They escorted us from the building.
They had security escort us out.
Yes.
Yep.